go. Unfreaking believable. Unbelievable. I gotta be honest with you. That game drove me nuts. I cannot believe the Buccaneers lost that game. Wow. I don't even know what to say. Tough one. Man, that was an absolute blazer from the Cougs, wasn't it?
What a crazy game. The Bulls are bowl-bound for the third season in a row. An incredible performance. Hey, listen, we know the competition. They did what they had to do. No more silver linings. No more moral victories. It was put up or shut up time. And boy, did they rise to the occasion.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Recher podcast. Happy January 21st, 2026. This is going to be a busy freaking day. I already recorded one of the interviews for the show today. Our good friend Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. We've got a slew of guests on the program. We also have the Beckles and Recher podcast at about 2:30 today. I've got practice. I've got softball. It is just one of those Wednesdays, ladies and gentlemen. It is just wild. Hope everybody is doing well. I hope you're doing as well as our Tampa Bay Lightning. Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable last night. I feel bad if you threw your hat on the ice because you thought that it was a hat trick for Brandon Hagel, because it was not. They did not announce in the arena that that second goal was given to Anthony Cirelli, not Brandon Hagel. So I feel bad if you threw your hat on the ice last night. But hey, the Lightning win it 4-1. 13 out of their last 14. They've gotten points in 14 straight. I asked John Cooper after the game about Anthony Cirelli. He doesn't seem overly concerned, so I wouldn't be concerned as well. So that's some decent news there. If you missed the video of him explaining the penalty that they got, the only penalty that they got last night, assistant coach Dan Hino jumping in the air, trying to catch a puck that looked like it was going out of play and then dunking it. I mean, weird, just weird that you would get a delay of game penalty for something like that. It is what it is, but they killed it off. But a really cool explanation from Coop. That's on all of my social media platforms. Go check it out now. Follow me at Recher, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. I am everywhere. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. Can't do this without you guys. So every super chat that you send over certainly helps. And then, of course, our partners. Honest Hammer Custom Builders, LLC, for all your residential and commercial needs. 813-244-0956. And then EverHealth, our EverHealth injury report tomorrow at 12:30 with our good pal, Dr. Carlos Rodriguez, everhealth.org. 17 different locations in Pinellas County. They can help you out, man. They're the future of healthcare. I go there myself, so you should too. What do we have on the show today? It does not stop. We'll talk a little Bucks. Mike McDaniel looks like he's going to the Chargers. The Buccaneers bring in a special teams coach with a lot of pedigree. Where do they go from here? We'll discuss that right at the top. Then, a chat that I just recorded with our good friend Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. She has been all over the Tampa Bay Rays and their stadium sagas. I got to be honest with you. I fail to have the optimism, and she's going to tell you another reason why Rays fans might have a little pause after what she heard yesterday from our governor, Ron DeSantis. I don't know. She says, and you'll hear it in a second, we're not even at step one of this process. We're at like step half. So I don't know. I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm not going to be totally optimistic. It kind of is what it is. At 12:30, our good pal Rich Hollenberg is going to join us on the program. He will, we'll ask him his opinion on the Rays stadium, but I want to talk more about the Rays. I want to talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame. We saw last night the two guys that I said should be in, Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones. They get in. We'll also talk some college hoops as well with our pal, the great Rich Hollenberg. At 1 o'clock today, our buddy Marc Raimondi from ESPN, the Falcons beat reporter, is going to join us. You remember he wrote that incredible book on the NWO. You see the beef online with Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield. And it was a story written by D. Orlando Ledbetter, who's been around for a long time covering Atlanta sports. and he mentioned that Baker Mayfield's time in Cleveland was a failure, and Baker did not take that too well. And he went to say that Kevin Stefanski didn't even say goodbye when they discarded him like a piece of trash. So we'll talk to him about that, and also the future of the Falcons. Where do they go from here? A heck of a draft class for them, but you think about it, it's a new era, new age with Kevin Stefanski there, and they're going to be playing the Bucs twice a season, so that's going to be a very frosty relationship between Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield. And then we move them back. He's going to be joining us at 1:30 today, our good pal Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. His thoughts on the red-hot Tampa Bay Lightning, what he saw last night. This team is just relentless. Brandon Hagel, got a chance to talk to him after the game last night. He's in such good spirits. There's such a good vibe with the team right now. It's fun. It's fun to be a Bolts fan, and we are 10 days away or 11 days away from the outdoor game at Raymond James Stadium. Very, very exciting. Again, questions, comments, concerns, leave them there at the bottom of the screen if you want to join in via the video chat, whether it's on your phone or the laptop. Just click on the link right there, StreamYard.com/5T, 5Q78T6TM. Shout out to everybody if you've been watching the WWE Unreal that came out yesterday. I was watching a little bit as I was getting my work done. They did it again, and just such a great storyline. It's really cool to be able to see, a little bit of a sneak and a peek behind the curtain. So if you enjoyed the first season of WWE Unreal, definitely check out season 2 as well. Our guy David Terry, our Bolts are like a well-oiled machine right now, Jay Bird. You got that right. What's up, all Bolts? Looking solid. Not surprised that McDaniel picked the Chargers over the Bucs. Rolly says really sucks with McDaniel. I'm with you, Dolan. Ray Stadium discussion is so exhausting. Bucs are going to suck no matter what, so they might as well load up speed and air it out every week. We might lose more than we win, but at least be entertaining. And I think that's the big thing as we start our discussion today about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is, there was an interview with Dan Pitcher. They're bringing Brian Callahan back for a second interview. Zach Robinson is obviously a guy that has been in discussion. I know they spoke to Todd Monken, but Monken's going to go. Monken's going to go to the Giants. I don't see why he would not go to John Harbaugh and go up there with Jackson Dart and those fellas. But I look at this situation. I'm not surprised that Mike McDaniel took that job to go with Jim Harbaugh over there. And, you want stability. You want stability. You want to know where you're at. And taking that job does not preclude him from taking another head coaching job next year. I mean, this is a really, really good option for him. He gets to go to the Chargers. He gets to work with Justin Herbert and Omari and Hampton. You know that they're going to continue to invest. I mean, they had some bad luck on the offensive line, but you're going to have Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt as your tackles next year. Mike McDaniel's got to look around and say, Ladd McConkey. They're going to probably get a couple of guys through the draft. You're going to bring in, I'm sure, free agents that are going to be excited to work with a guy like Mike McDaniel. So it makes sense. It sucks for us here in the Bay Area that wanted him, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast. And now, where does your attention turn to? It's got to be to a guy like Zach Robinson, I believe. Got better with the Falcons last year as the year went on. Anybody that wants something from that Sean McVay tree, he was a guy that they wanted a couple of years ago. So, I mean, to be able to bring a guy in here that's got some familiarity with what works with Sean McVay's offense, Baker Mayfield, I'm sure, would endorse that union here in the Tampa Bay area. I don't think this is a situation like we saw a couple of years ago where this guy said no and this guy said no, kind of like Monken no, and you're going and everybody's like, who the heck is Dave Canales? Nobody knew who the heck that guy was. So I think the Bucs are in a better spot right now than where they were. But it does hurt a little bit to know that Mike McDaniel is not that guy. But they did make a hire yesterday, and they brought in Danny Smith, a 25-year veteran of the National Football League. He's 72 years young. And if you remember, you've seen him on the sidelines before for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's always he's jawing with that gum, man. He chews the hell out of that damn thing. But he's going to be brought in as the replacement for Thomas McGahee. He was fired on January 8th, and some may look at the age, and I don't care about the age when it comes to something like this. Give me a guy that's got structure. Give me a guy that's good fundamentals. Give me a guy that knows what it looks like and knows how important it is to be solid on special teams. I don't think anybody's looking for world beaters out here. We don't need to have, the greatest punter, kicker, and return game in the world, but just don't let it lose the game for the Buccaneers. That's what pissed a lot of people off. Missed coverages, getting kicks blocked, getting punts blocked, and then getting to a point where there was a miscommunication where you were scared to kick it off to the other team. Like, that's not a way to be successful. So to bring in a guy that has been around the league, that knows exactly what it takes to be successful, I got no issues with Danny Smith coming in as the special teams coach. More on this a little bit later on, but I wanted to get into this chat before we talk to our pal Rich Hollenberg at 12:30. Our friend Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. She's all over it. She has been for a very long time with the stadium issue. And yesterday with the vote unanimously from Hillsborough County to have everything go to the HEC campus, but it's not so cut and dry. If you missed any of the chat, if you missed any of the semantics of what happened yesterday, Colleen's going to break it all down right here. Our good friend Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. Here you go. All right, now we are chatting with one of my favorite guests ever, not just here on the Jay Recher podcast, but also back when I was on WDAE, our good friend Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. Colleen, I know you're not 100%, so thank you so much for taking some time. The weather looks beautiful out there where you are today. I mean, it's a little chilly for us Floridians, but man, it's better than being, I was just talking to my friend in upstate New York, 9 degrees. I think it's a little bit better here than there. Happy freaking Wednesday to you. How are things?
Things are good. Thanks for having me back, Jay. Yeah, the weather is beautiful. I just lost my voice a little bit, but it's all good. I'm excited to be back on the show.
You are the best. All right, let's get right into it. I mean, we look at this entire thing with the Rays in the stadium. I feel like we've had so many different types of conversations over the years when it comes to the Rays. It's hard for me to get excited, right? I mean, because I feel like we've been down this road before, Colleen. So give us the latest from what you can, and how excited should Rays fans be? Like, how far along in this journey are we to possibly getting shovels in the ground? It's so weird. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over. Excuse me if I'm just a little bit like, it's almost like the Green Day song, Wake Me Up When September Ends kind of thing. Like, where are we at?
Okay, new year, same story. As far as optimism, kind of split. So let's recap what happened yesterday, and I'll take you through my day. So
okay.
First thing in the morning, we get the memorandum of understanding between Hillsborough College and the Rays. Here's kind of what's going on. The Rays basically want to ground lease much of the Hillsborough College Dale Mabry campus. It's actually the campus that butts up right to Steinbrenner Field and is across the street from Raymond James Stadium, of course, where the Bucks play. So basically, the Rays just want to lease that land, and that most of it, we don't even know the exact proportions. We haven't gotten an answer yesterday. More on that later. But basically, the Rays Hillsborough College would kind of like relocate and concentrate in like the southwest corner, and the stadium would be in the southeast corner, and then there would be a little bit more development in like the northwest corner. The northeast corner, of course, is like Steinbrenner Field. So yesterday, Hillsborough College voted on this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, and it basically is kind of just like a term sheet. It's not very long. It was about 10 pages, but it's light reading if you want to take a look at it. But it basically is kind of like a roadmap to everything they have to agree with. For example, there's no financing structure yet. We don't know what the Rays want to pay to ground lease this land for 99 years. We don't know that yet. That's something they got to figure out. So there's terms like that. There's also something in there that Hillsborough College in this MOU can exclusively negotiate with the Rays for 180 days. You talk about optimism. St. Petersburg and Pinellas County and the Rays back in 2023, by the time they had a tentative deal in place where people knew the public financing split to when the votes happened for September 2023 to July of 2024, when binding votes happened, that was 10 months. This window is for 5. So I'm going to kind of jump in the timeline a little bit, but Hillsborough College, its board of trustees, which are all appointed by the governor, so they are not elected, voted unanimously for this MOU without any discussion. And then, so it's kind of like the start, it's kind of like basically the start of a brand new process. There were a lot of questions that were asked at this press conference that was hosted by Hillsborough College and the Rays immediately after. I would say Ken Babby and Ken Atwater kind of answered none of the questions. It was answered, asked, what is Hillsborough College getting out of this? Because it seems like they're going to be disrupted and have to move. They were like, oh, we'll have internships and stuff for the students with the stadium there. It's like, okay. Then it was kind of, I asked the question, what happens in 180 days? Like, does that mean you still need approvals from the city of Tampa, from Hillsborough County? You've got the Tampa Sports Authority involved. You got the airport involved because of height restrictions.
Yeah.
So do those happen within the 180 days? Do they not? And what happens if 180 days comes and goes? No answer from Ken Babby. It was just a complete non-answer. So there's a lot of questions here, and I get that it's the beginning of negotiations. We talk about optimism. Let me take you back earlier in this day when I went to a press conference with Governor Ron DeSantis. He was here at, funny enough, St. Petersburg College in Pinellas Park. And I asked him the question about what his reaction is to this MOU between Hillsborough College and the Rays. And he said that Rays fans have a lot of optimism, that there's a reason they should be optimistic, that the right ownership group is in place. He said, Jeff Vinnick's Lightning shows what you could do with like a good leadership, good ownership group, and you could build up a good organization. He said he thinks the current Rays ownership has that. But he said something kind of interesting that, Governor Ron DeSantis from Dunedin, so Tampa Bay native, played Little League baseball, huge baseball fan. He said that Tampa Bay should have kind of like the first crack at, kind of like first dibs at having the team stay here. But if not, Orlando would love to have them. And he got specific. He said that, of course, Walt Disney World's Wide World of Sports would be happy to have them, that Universal Studios could put it right next to their parks. It was interesting. And his kind of whole thing is, I'm the governor. I want them to stay in Florida. I think Tampa Bay has a good shot. He loves the idea of, kind of like what the Atlanta Braves have in the Battery, of a stadium surrounded by a development. That's what the Rays are going for here. So Governor DeSantis was all kind of, he literally said, Rays fans, baseball fans in Tampa Bay have a reason to be optimistic. But it was interesting how we don't have a lot of specifics. And he did kind of nod to that, there's some details that need to be ironed out, but we don't have a lot of specifics. Not a lot of questions were asked. It's interesting that he threw out Orlando. So, it's interesting.
That's not something Tampa Bay fans want to hear, Colleen.
Yeah,
right? Because we've been
not
saying, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The Orlando Dreamers, no. But the fact that on a day like this, where you're trying to build optimism for Rays fans and the team staying here in the Tampa Bay area, whether it's in St. Pete or Tampa, the fact that the governor of this state not even prompted of like, all right, well, where could they move if it didn't work out there, just so happens to mention Orlando, that can't make Rays fans feel, too great on a day where we're supposed to be really happy about something happening in this part of the state.
Yeah. And to be fair, this press conference with DeSantis happened, I want to say he was late. It was like 11:30 in the morning. Hillsborough College vote didn't happen till 4 p.m. So, yeah, but it's kind of like, I think the best way to look at this is that we are at the beginning of another very long process. That's just the bottom line. There's a lot of things that need to happen, a lot of things that come together. It does seem like they have a different plan. In ground leasing, public land owned by the state, basically, right? Like I said, Hillsborough College is controlled by trustees who are appointed by the governor. So, and Patrick Zalupski, new owner of the Tampa Bay Rays, tight with DeSantis. Zalupski was a donor to DeSantis for his presidential run. And Zalupski was appointed by DeSantis to the Board of Trustees for the University of Florida. So there's a good relationship there. Right. And that's a good sign, but there's a lot of approvals. We need to think back to like September of 2023 when there was a tentative agreement, but that even had dollar figures associated with this. We don't know what those dollar figures are yet. So we're like I don't even want to say step one. We're at like step half into a new process. But it's a different process, so maybe it's better. Maybe it's different this time. The governor seems to think so, but he did, without prompting, without me asking, he did bring up Orlando, that Orlando would love to have a crack at this.
Yeah, I don't know if Rays fans are going to be over the moon for that one. So, I mean, so what? All right, so we're at step half. I love the way you said that. We're at step half of this process. You're not wrong. You're not wrong, my friend. So, what's step 3/4? What is step one? When's the next time we're going to hear something about this? When's the next vote? When can we go? All right, well, this is where we're heading, I guess, here now.
Great question. I spoke with some folks after the meeting, briefly and casually, who said that, we should be paying attention to Hillsborough College and the next Board of Trustee meetings that happen after this. Of course, the Tampa Bay Times and my colleagues at the Tampa Bay Times, it's not just me. We've got a whole team working on this. We'll be requesting records, doing interviews, running down people, getting, what we can, reporting this out. But you'll see negotiations on Hillsborough College's side. You're going to see this more now that there's kind of a site chosen with the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County. Tampa Sports Authority is probably, I would say, 99% going to be involved. So there's a lot of players in this, and that's another thing, is that there's just more players than there were in St. Pete and Pinellas in that deal. But it seems like the region, when I say the region, Tampa Bay really does want to keep them here, and let's see how that shakes out. Like, maybe it'll be fine. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I never want to be on here and be like doom and gloom, but I do want to caution people that it's just, and again, nothing in this memorandum of understanding that was approved yesterday is binding. So like, even the 180 days, like,
right,
maybe that's nothing. You know what I mean? It's basically just a way to start the agreement. But speaking of timeline, Ken Babby did bring up that, like, yeah, we're still talking about opening a new stadium in April of 2029. And there have not, and I've asked about this repeatedly, Mayor Ken Welch, the mayor of St. Petersburg, has brought up, oh, well, the Rays are probably going to need an extension. The Rays kind of don't almost acknowledge that. They're like, we're so grateful for rebuilding our relationship with St. Petersburg. We're still optimistic that we can have, I'm paraphrasing, we're optimistic to have an opening by April 2029. That's a really short timeline. Again, if you look at the St. Petersburg Pinellas deal, they were supposed to break ground. We're in 2026. They're supposed to break ground first quarter 25 for opening in 28. So if you were sticking to the same timeline, you would have to break ground first quarter 26 for 29. But we're not there. We don't even know how much it costs. So, like, again, Governor DeSantis says lots to be optimistic about. You did have a very easy breezy, no discussion vote with trustees, but there's a lot we don't know. There's just a lot we don't know, and there's a lot more players involved. So we'll see.
Yeah, to me, the timeline doesn't match up, and I appreciate you trying to keep that vein of optimism here on the show, which is great, and I appreciate that. But, in reality, you're right. I mean, because we've been we've been hammering these timelines, right, of the first quarter of 2025, and I kept saying first quarter of 2025, and it's come and gone, and 28, and then obviously with the storms and things getting pushed back. And if you're going to try to keep it on these concrete timelines, then, like, obviously we know, right? Like, that's the good and the bad thing of seeing renderings and hearing discussions about stadiums. Like, people even that are in kind of just like the that don't do this for a living, like yourself, like, you kind of understand like what it takes, right? You understand what the votes, you understand that you need to hear about the finances, you understand that you need, whether it's county, city involvement. Unfortunately, we've had too much practice when it comes to something like this. Before I let you go, is there anything else that stood out to you about the meeting? Where does St. Pete kind of live with all this? I feel bad. I saw a video yesterday of a man who was just absolutely crestfallen that, it looks like his team's going to go to the Tampa side. But, give me something else that maybe we haven't touched on today, and kind of where did this leave St. Pete?
That's a great question. So St. Petersburg, right now, they're in a 30-day window. So to solicit proposals for the historic gas plant district. That's what they call the land where Tropicana Field is. And they're ready to kind of move on and build something else there. Let's see what kind of proposal is chosen and how far that goes. There's a little bit of consternation over how that process is going, but American Welch is like kind of ready to move on, and let's just redevelop this land and bring jobs and businesses and housing and things that were promised to the community of the gas plant. Of course, the gas plant was the redlined Black community that lived there before that land was raised and Tropicana Field came in. As I spoke with some elected officials on Friday, both for and against the deal, the original deal, the St. Petersburg Pinellas 2024 Rays deal, and they were kind of like, good luck, like hope you can figure it out. It felt very much a like, good luck to you, good luck to the start of negotiations.
Right,
we'll see. You know, some people I think that like it won't work out in Tampa or Hillsborough County and they'll come back to the Trop. Maybe, but like you've got a city that's also ready to go.
Yeah.
There's also doubts about this process and how it's going. Who knows? Again, maybe that'll work out fine. Maybe it won't. We also have an election coming up on this side of the bay. So who knows with timelines if that's going to be an issue. But I do think, I mean, I do think like if the governor is coming out and even saying Orlando, he's the governor, you know what I mean? He knows, he's a baseball fan. He's aware, you know, as you reported before, DeSantis met with Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball. So he's in the know. He's definitely in the know. And I don't know. I think if you're a St. Petersburg fan, you know, Rays fan in St. Petersburg, enjoy 26 and 27 and 28, because I don't rule anything out, right? We thought, that there was going to be a deal and shovels and whatever, and then 2 hurricanes came. You just never know what's going to happen. But I do think if you're a Rays fan in St. Pete, I'd head to the Trop for 3 more years.
No doubt about it. Colleen_Wright on Twitter /X. Make sure you guys hear me say it all the time here on the show. Support local, support our friends at the Tampa Bay Times. We have our good friend Ed Encina on every Thursday to talk some Lightning hockey. We have our pal Joey Knight and, of course, Rick Stroud and Mark Topkin. Congratulations, Grandpa Topkin, with another little one added to the Topkin crew, and Colleen and John Romano. And we just love my friends over there. Again, guys and gals, I tell you this all the time with all the great things that we have here in our community, not just on the sports side, but just things like this, in the know. You got to support local. I'm an old school newspaper guy, and I will be subscribing to the Tampa Bay Times for as long as I live here in the Tampa Bay area. The one and only Colleen Wright. You want to talk about people that make our show a whole heck of a lot better, a whole heck of a lot smarter. Colleen is right there at the top of the list. You're the best, my friend. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. You sounded great. You sounded great. You didn't sound like you had a sore throat at all. You are the best. Thank God for the tea. Unbelievable. You're the best. Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks, Jay. Have a good one.
You too. All right, there you hear it right there from Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. She does such a great job of articulating everything and to make sure that we touch on just every single aspect of all of this Rays Stadium news that we've been able to digest over these last couple of years. And again, dating back to my days at WDAE, and Colleen jumping on with us that first time for, I think it was like 20 or 30 minutes, longer than a usual interview on the radio at that time. And I remember her, you know, hanging up the phone, and I just looked at Zach and we didn't realize how intricate some of these details were when it came to the new Rays Stadium. And geez, that was, you know, in another county. And now we're talking about a possible Rays Stadium on the Tampa side, but we know the information that we haven't heard. And it always comes down to what? The dinero, ladies and gentlemen. Where is this money coming from? What does Hillsborough County Community College, what do they get out of this entire thing? The involvement of Ron DeSantis. It's just a lot. Again, a layered story. Man, it's just, this is at the beginning. Again, this is not step 1. This is step half, and plenty of conversation ahead. And I don't like to talk about the Rays Stadium unless there's some pertinent information out there. I think it's low-hanging fruit, and if you need to talk about something that you really aren't privy to and you're not an expert in, I just think it's a waste of your time and a waste of my time. I don't like speculating on things like that. I'll give you my opinion on sports games and players and coaches and firings and hirings and things like that. But unless I'm bringing in somebody with some expert knowledge and there is new information to disseminate to everybody out there, I just think it's a pointless conversation to have. So I appreciate everybody and appreciate Colleen Wright for joining us on the program. You know, we have her on when we need to talk about the Rays stadium situation. We always need to talk to our pal right here. And I didn't know what to put as far as a lower third here, but the great and powerful Oz, the great and powerful Rich Hollenberg, the all-knowing. What's going on, brother? How are you?
JR, good to see you, buddy. I'm glad that you got it out of the way that you don't want to talk to an expert when it comes to the Rays. So let's welcome in Rich Hollenberg.
Rays Stadium, but you get, I mean, and the one thing I love about you, and I wanted to ask you about some other things that, it's funny. I have like, all right, these are the topics I want to talk to with our guests, and then all of a sudden they pop on air and something else goes into my head. But you do such a great job with your break-in, breakthrough, and again, richhollenberg.com doing such a great job with the next generation of sportscasters out there. And you have situations like this, Rich, where the stadium's always something that you can pop on there and everybody is going to have an issue, right? Everybody's going to have an opinion, but I only like to really talk about it when there's new information, when they have a vote like they did yesterday. What kind of discussion do you have with your students in situations like that of topics and making sure that they are kind of top of mind rather than low hanging fruit? Because I feel like there's plenty of things to be able to talk about in the sports world that you don't have to recycle the same old conversation. Let's not have a Mount Rushmore conversation. Let's not have you're right. There's got to be new and fresh things to be able to talk about.
Yeah, unfortunately, we live in a time of, hot takes rule.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I've run into a lot of aspiring sportscasters, and when I ask them, who do you look up to? Who do you want to be like? You hear Stephen A. Smith,
right,
and names like that, Pat McAfee.
Mm-hmm.
You hear those names pop up. I have nothing against those guys. Go live your best lives, and they have found their niche, and God bless them, because it's made them extraordinarily wealthy and successful. But they're not sportscasters, in my humble opinion. So I'm trying to influence and impact the next generation of sportscasters. And what I tell them is just be careful of hot takes. You don't have to be first, but you do have to be right. And so many people in this day and age of the 24-hour news cycle, good and bad, good being the news gets churned in and out in less than no time. So even if you're wrong, it's like, well, people are going to mention it and then move on. But your credibility is at stake. That's what I try to remind everybody. And if you're only interested in moving the needle and giving your opinion as if it's fact, at some point in time, that's going to come back and bite you in the ass. And you don't want that to happen if you want to be a sports reporter, a sports anchor, a play-by-play announcer, a journalist. Right. If you want to be a journalist, it's not about being first, it's about being right.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's why the guy that, it's weird getting into sports radio, but Sam Rosen, for a long time, Rangers guy, play-by-play on MSG, that was the one guy that I always looked up to, and I just how measured he was, and how even though he was the home play-by-play guy for the Rangers, he was always so complimentary of the other team, and you could tell he really did his homework. And if there's anybody that I would ever try to model myself after, it would be a guy like Sam. Before we get into Rays and some college hoops and baseball Hall of Fame, I wanted to ask you about. I've asked so many different people about this, but because you are teaching and working with the next generation of broadcasters, what was your take on the Jacksonville Jaguars reporter Liam Cohen situation? Because I put out a video and I tried to give both sides of it, right? I tried to give the humanity piece for people to really understand of like, all right, we understand the lady's kindness, but you need to understand if you've never been in that setting why it wasn't the right time and why it wasn't the right place. Whether you agree or disagree, I think a lot of people on the outside didn't understand. They're like, why is this the wrong time and place? And I went into the fact of, you're on short time, you have to be unbiased. Like, how are you expected to be able to do your job if you're buddy and you're more of a caretaker than a reporter? But as somebody that is dealing with something like this, where we're trying to educate the next generation, what was your take on that? And how did you give that message to your students of like, hey, this is why it works, this is why it doesn't work, this is why, time and place is very important in a setting like that?
Well, it didn't work for me, but I am not going to be critical of that reporter, that lady who made those comments. She didn't ask a question, she made comments, essentially. There's a place and a time for that. If you felt that important, or if you felt that it required you making those comments, then you do it off to the side and you get in touch with the communications director for that particular team and either ask for a moment with the head coach, or if you have enough of a relationship, you pull the head coach aside. You walk out when he walks out and you pull him aside and you take 15 seconds to tell him what she said in front of everybody. It felt very motherly to me. So in that sense, it was endearing. But again, the journalist in me thought she's got to read the room, like literally and figuratively. I have nothing wrong with what she said. I would tell you, Jay, to a man, I consider myself friends with a number of the coaches and players who I cover.
Right.
That is never reflected in the way I call a game or host a show or report a story. Never. So, as a journalist, that didn't sit right with me, but it goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago. That's low-hanging fruit.
Right.
My first thought about all of this was, who the hell cares? Like, why is this even being talked about? And the only reason it's being talked about is because TV shows and radio shows and podcasts have to have content. So this was something that was fairly unique. We haven't really seen this before.
Right.
And everyone just jumped on it. And then it was over. When you started asking me about this, I had to reset. Like, wait, what is he talking? Oh, yeah, that was a couple of weeks ago. Like, it's ancient news at this point. And that's the way our news cycle and our sports cycle works. I thought it was ridiculous that it was covered, just as much as I thought it was a little bit silly for her to choose that moment in time to make the comments that she made.
Yeah, I think to me it was more the reason why I spoke about it, and I've learned this from you and a lot of the people, like contextually, I approached it from a different angle. I didn't approach it from an angle of like, let's bash this woman or let's act like it's no big deal. I looked at it again contextually of, let me give both sides a reason why you think this way and you think this way. And why don't we use this as an example in this world where we have so many things that separate us, whether it's politics or religion or all these other different things. Let's find some common ground where maybe you didn't think it was a big deal, but see it from a journalist point of view. If you've never been in those press conferences, when you got 15 minutes, you got to get to the locker room. You have to be unbiased because people don't think that your opinion will be valid if you're too much of a fanboy or a fangirl. Like, there's a lot that goes into it that I think people they just kind of look past. And that's why I spoke about it rather than being the low hanging fruit, like you said. Last night, Baseball Hall of Fame they elected two more players to go in. I look at Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones as two of the best center fielders that I've seen in my 4 decades here on the earth. Beltran, a switching dynamo that was good for multiple teams, and Andrew Jones, one of the best defensive center fielders. I mean, I still marvel at how shallow he played in center field. Like, dude, you shouldn't be doing that. You're playing slow pitch softball outfield. What did you make of those two guys going in? Was there anybody else that you think should have went in? I mean, what do you think?
Oh, God. I sound like such an old man shouting at the clouds when you ask me questions like that. The older I get, the more my eyebrows get raised at who is going into the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And I think I might speak for most people who are in the business and cover the sport and kind of grow up through the sport.
Right.
I don't think of Carlos Beltran or Andrew Jones as Hall of Famers.
Okay.
Like I always go back to, and again, this makes me sound maybe dated or ancient or whatever, but I think because there's not one, but one of the great baseball minds of our or any generation is Tim Kirkjian. And
Right.
I know Tim. I've known him for a long time. And I know how much he cares about this sport. He is as much a steward for Major League Baseball as anybody who's ever lived, let alone written about the sport. And I always go by Tim's guideline. You have to dominate for at least a decade to be considered one of the best baseball players of all time. If I asked you, and again, maybe we should have this conversation, maybe not now on a podcast, but you're almost 15 years younger than me. If I asked you who were the 10 best players when you were falling in love with the sport, I don't think either of these guys are those two.
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to be a hard ass about it.
No.
But I just don't think that these two guys are Hall of Famers. If they are, and the more people like them that they're letting in, you're opening the door to, okay, when is the next wing of Cooperstown under construction? Because you're running out of room. And in some way, shape, or form, do I feel like it lessens the accomplishments of true Hall of Famers who are in Cooperstown and who deserve to be in Cooperstown? I think I do. And this is nothing against them personally or professionally. Were they great players? Yes. Were they great players for a decade? Yes. But did they dominate the sport for a decade? I think that should be at least the baseline for determining who's in any Hall of Fame. It should be special. It should be hard to get entry into that exclusive club. So that's where I fall on it.
No, I like it. I appreciate that too, because I think my stance has softened over time, because I used to think it should be no doubt, right? It should be one of those things where is a guy in or is a guy out? Like I think it's weird that it's like a unanimous vote, right? Like it's just, to me, you shouldn't have a gray area. Like the fact that you have to argue for somebody to be in the Hall of Fame kind of eliminates it, right? If you have to have somebody stand up there, and I joke with my pal Ira Coffin all the time about he's got to go up in front of the room and make all these arguments about Rondé and all these different things, and eventually he gets in on the 6th or 7th try. Like, isn't it weird? Like, shouldn't guys just get one try and that's it? But I've kind of changed and again softened my stance on that. Beltran, I think, to me, was such a good switch hitter, and he was so damn good in that one playoff run with the Houston Astros, and I understand the criterion that you use. Andrew Jones defensively, and I guess I'll ask you that. Do you think we favor offensive statistics a little bit too much when we talk about Hall of Fame? Because I feel like that's the first thing that we use, right? That's the sexy statistic, but nobody ever goes, well, this guy hit 500 home runs, but what was his glove like? And if it was average or below average, it never really keeps the guy out of the Hall. However, a guy like Andrew Jones, where you talk about dominating, he had 10 gold gloves. I would argue that he was the dominant center fielder, and he also hit 430 home runs. So what do you think about how baseball uses statistics, and do they favor offense maybe a little bit more and maybe not defense enough?
I think any sport would put more weight on the offensive side of things, for sure. Obviously, we're not talking about pitchers. Those are mutually exclusive to this conversation. But, maybe it'll take till the next generation of baseball fans and writers to have a greater appreciation of defense because of the aforementioned statistics and analytics. It wasn't until recently that we started tracking things like DRS, defensive runs saved, or OAA, outs above average. Those are defensive metrics. And the more you put those into play and into the baseball vernacular, I think maybe the more a player who is defensive oriented gets a little more shine instead of a little more shade. Now, am I saying that Kevin Kiermaier deserves to be considered for the Hall of Fame? No. And I love KK.
Yeah.
But he was one of the dominant, if not the dominant defensive player for a good stretch of years. Not 10, but a good stretch of years. He would not sniff the Hall of Fame because of his bat or lack thereof. Now, Andrew Jones, you talk about him, absolutely. And when you mention those numbers, I'm like, okay, Andrew Jones, those are Hall of Fame-ish numbers. Ish.
Yeah, ish.
He doesn't get in on the first ballot. Like, come on. Like, I would love it, if just one year they came out of those meetings and someone stood at a podium and goes, we're sorry to say that no one was chosen for the Hall of Fame.
No one made it. Yeah.
Good luck next year. And maybe he gets in the next year. And maybe really the more I talk about it, I should be out laying down on a couch, Jay. And you're my psychoanalyst. Maybe the more I think about it, the more I think of those two dudes, Beltran and Andrew Jones. Maybe they're Hall of Famers, but not first ballot Hall of Famers.
Right. Yeah. And maybe
they do have to wait a few years and get the Hall of Fame voters used to the fact that, wow, I didn't think 400 plus home runs and 10 gold gloves carried as much weight. But a few years later, I'm looking and there really aren't a lot of those guys coming down the pike either. Just like there weren't a lot before Andrew Jones. So you know what? I reserve the right to change my mind, and I'm going to change my mind, and Andrew Jones is a Hall of Famer now. Right. But first ballot, to me, that's ish. He's Hall of Famer-ish.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And I think that's when you look at baseball too. Some of those statistics of the lowest number, position with defensive, with designated hitters. Like, there's not a lot of center fielders in the Hall of Fame. And I had this conversation a couple of years with somebody, and they were talking about everyday top tier center fielders. And man, after Trout and some of these other guys, you're like, wow, like there's really not that many. It's
think about it. It's not a power position.
It's not. And it's also, it takes a toll on your body. I mean, these guys are getting banged up, and they're quick to move guys to the corners to be able to kind of save their legs so they can keep their bat in the lineup. I want to ask you about the Rays, Rich, and some of the moves that they've made. I think this is a big year for them going forward. You and I both had this discussion, a couple of months ago about don't expect the Rays to start opening up the pocketbooks real quick because they got a lot more, they got to get their ducks in a row when it comes to the stadium and where the future of this franchise is going to be. But, they move on from Boz. We saw, obviously, they moved from Taj Bradley in the regular season. They brought in a guy like Cedric Mullins. I mean, when you look at this Rays team, what are some of the things that stick out to you as we get closer and closer to pitchers and catchers reporting?
My default, and I probably said this on your show numerous times already, Jay, my default is Erik Neander is one of, if not the best general managers in all of baseball. So I ride or die with Erik Neander. And although he is strapped to the confines of whatever the budget is, some financial decisions will impact his ability to sign players. I like the fact that they are doing what they're doing. I really like Cedric Mullins. I think at the end of the day, going into spring training, you have to look at it as a black or white issue. Is this an upgrade or a downgrade?
Right.
Cedric Mullins, upgrade. Second base, is Gavin Lux an upgrade? Not necessarily from Brandon Lau, because I thought once the season was over, there was a better than good chance that Brandon wouldn't be on the team going into this season, and lo and behold, he's not. So is Gavin Lux an upgrade at second base compared to the alternative, which going into spring training sounded like it was Richie Palacios. I love Richie. You love Richie. New York kid. great energy giver in the clubhouse, multiple positions. He's versatile when healthy, but he's not an everyday second baseman, bro.
No,
And
he's
I
a
think
super
Rich-
U guy. Yeah.
So Gavin Lux upgrade at second base? Yes. Is Griffin Jacks, who is now your leader in the clubhouse, to be the closer on this team? Is he an upgrade from Pete Fairbanks? Yes, he is. Sorry, Pete, but Griffin Jacks is an upgrade. So I think the Rays have made upgrades without breaking the bank, which we knew they were never going to do in the first place. Ketel Marte was not going to be a Tampa Bay Ray, just like Freddie Freeman was not going to be a Tampa Bay Ray. So I go in black and white. Are these positions upgraded? Yes, they are, across the board. Then you look at some of the other talent they got. Is Jacob Melton going to play out? Is he going to break camp with the big club? I'm still not sure overall how good our outfield is going to be. I'm all in on Chandler Simpson. Stick him in the one spot and put a Sharpie on it and let him get 150 games in the leadoff spot because he is a game wrecker for the other team. And then the rest of your lineup, you line it up after that. Does Yandy hit 2? Does Junior hit 3? Does Aranda hit 4? I'd feel pretty damn good about that top half of the lineup. But what we saw last year was it's the depth of that lineup. Or as Kevin Cash likes to say, how thick is your lineup? The thickness of the Rays lineup last year was not that great. So how thick can you make that lineup after that? That's where the question marks arise. Gavin Lux, Cedric Mullins, how are they going to be with a bat in their hands? And you just have to hope, A, that they stay healthy, and neither one has necessarily shown that yet, but B, that they could be the best version of themselves. Cedric Mullins was an all-star. Gavin Lux was a top pick from the Dodgers. If they could be the best version of themselves, I think we've got a chance to be above 500.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What was your first thought when you heard the news of Kyle Tucker going to the Dodgers? And do you think we're headed for a lockout? Because I'm starting to see more and more. And again, you can't always believe what you hear on social media, Rich, but it seems like a lot of owners are not too happy with how this whole situation is going down. Were the Dodgers going to stand pat after winning the World Series? No, they just go out and get Edwin Diaz and Kyle Tucker, two of the biggest names out there. What's your take on not just Tucker going to Hollywood, but also the future of this game?
I think it's obscene. It's insulting as a baseball fan that one player will make that much money. But it's also a sign of the times. Giants just signed John Harbaugh for $20 million a year. Like, are we freaking kidding ourselves? Come on. I just think the numbers are so out of whack that everybody has lost perspective. Do I think those kind of contracts ultimately add fuel to the fire of what could be a strike or a lockout next year? Unfortunately so, because anything right now is going to be taken for kindling, leverage, arguments against, whatever you want to call it. But when you sign a deal like that, and you know those deals are one in very, very few in baseball, just because there aren't many teams who could ink that kind of a deal. I could think of 4, maybe. The Cubs, the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Dodgers. And that would be about it. So would the other 26 teams look at that and go, we have to lock out because we need something different, or else it's just going to keep becoming similar to our socioeconomic system in the United States, where you're losing the middle class and it's either the haves who are in the penthouse and everyone else is a have-not. And does that disclude 26 teams from winning a World Series? No, but that's the beauty of sports. And we need to get back to embracing and appreciating that being the best thing about sports. That's why March Madness is the best sporting event in all of sports, because you have 68 teams. There might be 8 teams who you go into that tournament going, yeah, they could win a national championship. And then 7 of those 8 teams get dumped in the first 2 rounds of the tournament or something like that. That's why I think March Madness is the best sporting event in all of sports, because it gives David and his slingshot a fighting chance against Goliath, because on any given day, one team can rise up and be better than another. But in the playoffs in Major League Baseball, you don't have that, because you're playing 3 or 5 or 7 game series. And so the cream will 99% of the time rise to the top. I choose to remain hopeful that the two sides won't be so pig-headed and idiotic that they would ruin their sport, or at least take a sledgehammer to the sport that had to rebuild itself after 1996 and whatever those years were after the steroid era. I would hope that smarter brains would prevail, but I'm going to choose to be cautiously optimistic at this point that they could avoid that.
Rich, before I let you go, just give me 2 minutes on college hoops. Who's the one team or the one player that is standing out to you? I mean, there's already been so many good games, and you look at some of these young players, and obviously the Bansa from BYU is incredible, and then the kid from Kansas, and I watch a whole ton of Cam Boozer over there at Duke. What has stood out for you so far this season? I mean, Arizona's at top of the top of the heap right now, is one of the only undefeateds, but Nebraska's in there as well. Man, some good college basketball early on this year.
Yeah, it's been great, and it'll continue to be that way with the way that the schedules and NIL and things like that have all kind of combined to change the landscape of college basketball and how teams schedule. So I think that's a win for the sport. To answer your question, though, I think right now it's Arizona and UConn and everybody else. That doesn't mean that there aren't a bunch of teams that could rise up. Michigan is really good. I think Florida is just starting to hit their stride, and they're going to be in that conversation. I love BYU. I've been really fortunate, Jay. I've seen about half of the top 20 teams in college basketball already this season. I called Arizona at UCF last weekend. They are the best team in the country. And the thing that separates them, not that they're the only team that does this, but they play through their bigs. And not a lot of teams have that luxury. So the landscape of college basketball is we're going to jack up 33s, whether we are worthy of doing that or not, whether we have a good shooting team or not. We're going to shoot 33s, and that just means to me, you're rolling the dice. There's going to be 5 games where you're going to shoot like garbage and you're going to lose to teams you should have beaten. But there's also going to be 5 games where you shoot lights out and you beat a couple of teams that you probably shouldn't have beaten. But everything else is going to regress to the mean. I think Arizona, who, when I called them last Saturday, they were 349th in the country in 3-point attempts.
Wow.
How refreshing is that?
Mm-hmm.
They still shoot it at a great clip, 37% from beyond the arc as a team, but they don't rely on the 3. They only play 8 guys, but those 8 guys play 11 minutes or more. Really balanced team, and 8 is really all you need in college basketball. So I think they're the best team, bar none, right now, as long as they stay healthy. But just to put a local spin on it before we sign off here, I think USF is a team to watch, maybe not on the national scene, but certainly in the American Conference. I know they lost a tough one in overtime to Wichita State, but what Brian Hodgson has done immediately with USF is make them relevant and make them contenders in the American Conference. Now, they are one of those teams that loves the third. They live by it, they die by it, but they also play a tempo game. They want to steal 10 to 15 extra possessions a game. Why? because the analytics say that your chances of winning that game, if you play 10 more possessions, increase your probability of winning by like 75%. So instead of having a 50-50 chance, you might have a 60-40 chance to win the game just by getting 10 extra possessions. So that's the way Brian Hodgson likes to play it. And I'm going to be calling a couple of USF games,
Nice.
which I'm super psyched about. And it's going to be really interesting to see if they could hit their stride and stay hot from 3-point range, because if they can, look out. They get into the NCAA tournament, and as much as it would kill me to see them go 7 for 37 from 3-point range,
Right.
they could also go 17 for 37
Yep.
and take down a 3 or 4 seed in the first round if they got in.
No doubt about it. The Davids over the Goliaths. That's why we love college hoops. The one and only Rich Hollenberg, the great and powerful Rich Hollenberg, at Rich Hollenberg on Twitter/X. Go to richhollenberg.com, the break-in breakthrough. We even have a video up there from when he joined us here on the program months ago, where he described the entire thing of what it is. We're trying to build that next generation of sportscasters out there. Rich, always appreciate the time, my friend. Best of luck. Text me those USF dates so I can be at the game as well. And we'll talk soon, my partner. Thank you.
All right. See you, Jay. Thanks.
The great Rich Hollenberg. He's the man. I mean, to be able to talk about such a multitude of topics with him. And this is a big show today, man. We are just firing on all cylinders. And we're going to go right back to it. It's our good pal, Marc Raimondi, ESPN Falcons insider. Say hello to the bad guys. The book, you got to go get it right there. Get it wherever you can get books. I got mine on Amazon. And again, I was reading my book on the plane the morning that Hulk Hogan passed away. It was one of the most surreal moments of my entire life. What's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm realizing that the poster, the book cover is it's flipped because I guess I have the camera on this way. I don't usually do it this way, but now it looks like it's in like Latin or something. I don't even know what it is.
It's front facing here on the camera for us, so that works out pretty good. We'll talk football in a second. What do you think of the WWE Unreal stuff? I mean, my old school head of like, I don't always want to see how the sausage is made. Like it makes me kind of cringe a little bit. But then as a fan that like yourself, we're able to realize that like the dragons aren't real in Game of Thrones, right? Like I like it in that aspect of like, I get that they're showing us here, but they're not going past that line.
I definitely go both ways on this, Jay, because I find it entertaining, and I'm so fascinated by the inner workings of the business. Right. I mean, I wrote a book about it, right? I mean, so obviously I'm very interested in like that aspect of it, but I also do think that they pull the veil down a little bit too much. I mean, there is a certain amount that you want to keep secret. The magician should not give away all of his tricks. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be some things that they hold back, and I think they maybe go a little bit too far with the show. But this is a new era, right? It's this is 2026, and people are consuming content in a different way, and they feel like they can capitalize on that and maybe get some new fans by showing the one thing that I like about it, and the one thing that I think that wrestling needs to show more is that, because there's this stigma that wrestling is fake, and the reality of it is that I mean, it's a show like anything else. It is a scripted, predetermined show, but as you know, Jay, these injuries and the things that these men and women do, it's got nothing fake to do with it. It is an extremely dangerous world where all of these folks are beat up, and I want them to show more of that. How grueling doing this type of thing is, because it's like I think people are still like, that they know how to fall, or they're the way that they do it is fake. It's like, no, like the magic in wrestling is that these people are just tougher than everyone else. They are like made of like rubber. These wrestlers, and they do stuff and they get beat up, and it's all real physically, but it's obviously they're not trying to hurt their opponent.
Yeah, taking care of somebody is one of their most important things. Right. And I remember I was in a local show here one time, and a guy slammed me on my back. I had 2 herniated discs in my back just because he gave me a freaking backbreaker. He was like, "Oh, I'm going to slam you on the mat." So I'm practicing, taking bumps, and all of a sudden he changed at the last second right over his knee, 2 herniated discs. And I'm like, yeah, all right. Yeah, I don't want to hear anybody else talking about how wrestling doesn't hurt. Like, you're crazy. You're crazy. I wanted to shout you out to the stuff on Ariel Helwani. I mean, it's one of the best. He has one of the best shows, I think, any platform and any show. And he talks a lot about MMA and WWE. For you to be on there and the story that you told about trying to find out the person who made the NWO, like that was like investigative journalism, like 101, dude. So congratulations on that. What has it been like promoting the book and being able to hear from different people now that, I've asked you this months ago, but now that we're, probably 6 months, a year after?
It's just cool to hear from people who read the book and have really enjoyed it, because that's kind of what, because I mean, I'm a fan, and I've been a fan my whole life. So it's like people come to me and I get, I'm an author and I wrote the book, but more than anything, I just like to talk about wrestling with folks, and I love hearing from people who, who maybe haven't watched it in a long time, but that era of wrestling kind of spoke to them and they read the book and it brought them back. And I just love hearing that. I had a guy from Italy reach out to me last week, who he found the book in Italy and he read it, and he's like the president of like the Hulk Hogan fan club in Italy. Like, it's crazy, man. And I just love, wrestling is very communal. I love to share it with people, and I love when people come to me. And one of the coolest things was actually the comedian Anthony Jeselnik.
Yeah.
And I woke up one morning with like texts and like messages, and I look and people are like, oh, did you see this? And I'm like, no. Did you set this up? No. Anthony Jeselnik read my book and put it up on his Instagram story saying this book is awesome, and I had nothing to do with it. It wasn't part of my marketing plan. He just found the book, he bought it himself, and he loved it, and that was just so cool to me, because I'm a fan of his work.
Yeah, and he was great on the roasts, man. He's got some real dark
humor.
I love that kind of stuff. But you're right. I mean, I think about it last night. Me and my pal Ed Encina from the Tampa Bay Times and Corey Long, we're sitting there from 11 o'clock to 11:15 after a Lightning game, and we're trying to make predictions for the Royal Rumble. Right. And we don't leave and go to, we've been at the arena for 9 hours, but it's like this last 10 minutes of conversation is working backwards from WrestleMania and why it would be a good idea, why Sami Zayn and maybe Raquel Rodriguez would win the Royal Rumble, right? Like that's how wrestling fans do it. And you go back and forth, and it's a lot of fun. Make sure, check this out if you get a chance. Wrestling Jeopardy. I don't know if you've ever seen this on YouTube.
No.
This guy does wrestling. Just put Wrestling Jeopardy in.
Okay.
And this guy produces the hell out of it. And it's amazing. And the first 5 questions, like he does, it's just like Jeopardy. And then he gets into some real intricate stuff. Like you have to be a real fan. And I even question myself as, a big wrestling fan. Some of the questions I'm like, damn, I should have paid attention to the lighter that Hulk Hogan used when he did the messed up fireball in front of Ultimate Warrior's face back in the WC in the worst match of all time. All right, let's get into this whole big thing yesterday, because I saw that you wrote a quick story on it on ESPN.com. Kevin Stefanski, the new head coach. We'll talk about the future of the Falcons here in a bit, but this whole Kevin Stefanski Baker Mayfield thing is not going to die anytime soon, is it?
No, because they're going to play each other twice a year, and it's going to be the headline for all of these games now. It kind of like lights a fire under an already good rivalry between the Bucs and the Falcons, with Baker pretty much drawing a line in the sand and saying, Kevin Stefanski, you were my coach, and you never called me after I got shipped off like a quote piece of garbage, to from Cleveland. Just very, very wrestling like, Jay, right? When I was writing that, I feel like I was writing like a wrestling storyline. But you know what? This is what makes sports fun. I have no doubt that Baker Mayfield feels that way, but he's also a guy that I feel like uses certain things to get himself up for games. I know that he feels that way also about Carolina. So it just makes things interesting, and it gives us something to talk about. It's just it's sports, and it's fun. Sports is supposed to be fun at the end of the day.
It is, and it's cool too, because I've gotten a chance to know D. Orlando Ledbetter years ago. I mean, this is an OG when it comes to Atlanta sports. And
Hall of Famer.
It is. I mean, for this guy, I mean, I sat there with him and Ira Coffin one time and talked about the process of inducting players into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And for D. Orlando, him being in the middle of this too, it is kind of ironic that what he had to say about this whole situation. And I'm with you, man. I mean, Baker. You got to take every little thing as a professional athlete. Tom Brady did that. He probably still does that to this day. He finds every little inch. That's what a lot of these pro athletes do, right, Mark? I mean, they take whatever kind of slight, whatever kind of a notion that somebody is not holding them at high regard, and they're going to use that thing to motivate them, whether it's to work out in the off season or to do their best during the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, the Michael Jordan thing became a meme, and I took that personal. And I think that's how Baker Mayfield approaches a lot of these things, and I took that personal. And it seems like that's how he's going to now be approaching those Atlanta Falcons games. And by the way, the Falcons have gotten the better of the Bucs over the last couple of years pretty well. And we'll see how that goes next year. But it's certainly going to intensify that rivalry that is already, two teams that are competing pretty much every year for that NFC South crown.
So the end of the season for the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, you look at it, and I thought they were playing some of their best ball. I mean, it looked like things were kind of working out. And then they ended up making a change with Raheem Morris. Is this something that was it after some of those losses in the beginning of the season? Like, what was the thought process for Arthur Blank? Did he wanted to just give Matt Ryan kind of a blank slate to do his thing there? Why the decision to go in a different direction? Because you look at the two teams that you and I closely cover, the Buccaneers look like, man, they couldn't do anything right down the stretch, and they retained Todd Bowles. It looked like the Falcons are kind of figuring it out a little bit down the stretch, and they get rid of Raheem Morris. What kind of went in for, as far as you can tell, to the decision to move on and try to go for a new head coach there?
Well, one of the big reasons why they did what they did in firing Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, Jay, is that when the Falcons were kind of in a bad way, when they were 3-7, 4-9, and the season was already gone, the playoffs were already, not even possible, they hired a firm called Sportsology to basically go in and audit the organization and the organizational processes. And what came back from that audit was that the organization, the franchise, the football people, and the plan. This is according to Arthur Blank himself in a press conference a couple of weeks ago. He said that Sportsology said that there was a lack of clarity of vision of what they wanted the football team to be. What was the identity of the football team, and why? And that's what every team needs, right? You need some kind of a focus. You need to know what you're going to be, a great defensive team that stops the run and enforces the pass and so on. There's different styles of play. And I think that's one of the things that the Falcons lacked. And that's what kind of Sportsology came back and said, is that they lacked that vision of what, who do we want to be and what players do we need to get to accomplish that, and what coaches do we need to get to kind of implement that vision. So I think once that came back, Arthur Blank said, let's start with a clean slate, like you said. And one of the things that he wanted to do, and it kind of mimics what other organizations have done over the last few years, like something like a Chris Spielman in Detroit, where he's not the GM, he's not the coach, but he's somewhere, in that mix where he's overseeing things from a player's perspective and from an organizational perspective, reporting to the owner. And that is now what Matt Ryan is going to be doing, and has already been starting to do in Atlanta as the president of football. He is going to be overseeing the head coach and the GM and kind of making sure that they're on the same page with a shared vision. And vision is the word that, and it's not Seth Rollins' group in WWE, but that is a word that has gotten used a lot here in Atlanta over the last several weeks, and that is really what they're trying to accomplish. They hired Kevin Stefanski, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about next, and now they're in search of a GM, and the key is to get all of those guys on the same page as Matt Ryan to then move forward with whatever vision they decide to implement, for the Falcons.
Yeah, and we've seen it big time here in the Sunshine State with Tony Baselli, Jaguars great, and him being kind of that liaison between Gladstone and Khan and Liam Cohen. And I talked to my pal Jamal St. Cyr. He goes, he's been such a huge part of this. And, to be fair, I think the Falcons screwed up. I mean, they should have just brought in Paul Heyman if they would bring him in here, right? And ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman. Can you just imagine that, and him introducing Matt Ryan and Michael Pettis Jr.?
There you go. The head of communications, Paul Heyman. Who will be better than that?
This is why I love you, buddy, because you're like me. Every single thing that we can tie into wrestling, and I have a problem. And it's funny because growing up, my dad, my mom, my brothers, sisters, not into wrestling. Even my best friends, not into wrestling. This was a lone venture for me. So as I moved to Florida and I got into the sports media business, and I found out that a lot of the guys that are some of the top of their profession down here were wrestling fans, it was nice. It was good to know that I wasn't the the lone person out there that was this tribalistic wrestling fan that has been I used to eat my Flintstones vitamins just because Terry Bollea said so. That was it. All right, so Kevin Stefanski, right? I thought Mike McDaniel would have been a good spot there because man, to be able to have a guy.
Speaking of wrestling fans, Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, exactly. I thought Michael Penix Jr., left-handed quarterback, all those weapons. Like I thought that would have been a really good fit there. He ends up going to be the OC there with the Chargers now. What do you make of the Kevin Stefanski pick, and what's kind of the overriding sentiment for Falcons fans out there? Does this move excite them?
It's been mixed. It's been a mixed reaction from Falcons fans, and I think that it's so hard to judge a coach who was in Cleveland. And say what you will, that is it's true. It's an organization that has had a lot of struggles over the last several decades. I mean, if we're being honest, Kevin Stefanski in 2020 took the Browns to the playoffs for the first time since 2002 in 2020, 18 years later. So it's like an 18-year drought. And he took them to the playoffs twice in 6 years. Now, he did go 8-26 the last 2 seasons, but he also had like over a dozen quarterbacks in 6 seasons. You know what I mean? So it's like he was kind of given not a lot to work with, and he was given not a lot to work with from a talent perspective, but a lot to work with and a lot to deal with from a drama and outside and off the field stuff with even a Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson and so on and so forth. So he had a lot to navigate in Cleveland, and I don't think that we really know. It's hard to judge him just based on that. We saw him win, we saw him lose in Cleveland. It's hard to base, to kind of judge Kevin Stefanski on that 6-year run because we just don't know in a more kind of functional franchise, how he would do. And we're gonna find out, I guess, in Atlanta how it goes. But I think Stefanski and Matt Ryan found some common grounds. They're both Philadelphia guys, right? And I'm not. That's not the reason why he got hired, of course. But I think they found some common ground as far as like their vision, their maniacal watching of tape and kind of what their thoughts were for what the identity of the Falcons could and should be. And Kevin Stefanski always seems to when the pieces are in place to have a great running game. Well, Bijan Robinson is the running back for the Atlanta Falcons, and he's the guy that, of course, they're going to build that offense around, especially with Michael Penix Jr. out for an undetermined amount of time with his torn ACL recovering from surgery. So I think a lot of that is the reason why they thought it was a good fit, and I think they wanted someone who had a large swath of the head coaching experience. The Falcons have not hired a head coach who was coming off another head coaching job since 1997 when they hired Dan Reeves. So they've always kind of they've hired Arthur Smith and Raheem Morris, but they were kind of the hot coordinator on the market. They had head coaching experience before, but they were the hot coordinator. Kevin Stefanski just coached the team for 6 years. He was the guy in Cleveland. So I think that was a big part of it as well.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. To be able to go with all the different quarterbacks that they had there in Cleveland, it's tough to judge, and I'm interested to see with some stability, right, and having a similar vision, how that's going to work out. Speaking of work out, what's up with the quarterback position with the Falcons? Is it Penix? What do we know about his timeline? You said it's undetermined, but do you go with Kirk Cousins then to start the season? Like, where do you go? This is such a freaky thing. This may have, that decision may have ultimately cost Terry Fontenot his job. But yeah, I mean, the quarterback spot, what do we know about that?
What's interesting about the hiring of Stefanski is that he and Kirk Cousins have a history together, right? He was in Minnesota when Kirk Cousins was with the Vikings, and Cousins had one of his best seasons ever with Stefanski as his coach. And I think that in many cases that would make a lot of sense to kind of bring that, to kind of have a reunion in Atlanta, but I don't know if it's going to happen, Jay, because the way that the Falcons restructured Cousins' contract recently over the last couple months is that if they retain him this offseason, they're going to get hit with a pretty large load in 2027. Now, there's different ways that you can restructure again, and maybe you can cut him and then sign him back. I don't know. There's definitely certain there's ways to navigate the salary cap, right? That these teams know very well, but it sure seemed like that restructuring was a signal that they're going to start, that both sides are going to kind of start fresh beginning in March when free agency starts. And then, we'll see. Maybe that has now changed with Stefanski there. I don't know. And I think that's something that they're going to start talking about. They don't have a GM yet in Atlanta. That's another thing that they need to fill that role, pretty soon here, because, it's getting, things get late early around in the off season. It's not really even an off season, if we're being honest. They got to start doing homework on free agency, on the draft, and so on and so forth. But, I think certainly there are worse options than Kirk Cousins. He was 5-2 as a starter for the Falcons this season. So it's like, and he didn't have Drake London for three of the, he had all but two of those games. He didn't have Drake London, his best receiver. He was throwing to guys like Dylan Drummond and David Sills, all respect to those guys, but they're not top flight NFL wide receivers. And Cousins had a lot of success, down the stretch with the Falcons. They won 4 in a row, as you noted, and that was Cousins starting at quarterback at that point. So there are definitely worse options out there than Kirk Cousins, but I just think the price tag is going to be something that's going to be, they're going to be wary of that going into 26 and 27.
So now, as an option for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're looking at Zach Robinson as their offensive coordinator. You and I spoke about him, before the 2025 season, and one of the things that he really, I know, put an onus on was to try to get Kyle Pitts more involved. And Kyle Pitts looked a lot more like the first round pick this past season, especially as the year went on, than in seasons prior. If Zach Robinson does end up being the guy for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as their OC, what should Buccaneers fans expect?
I know that Zach Robinson was one of the public enemies of Falcons fans over the last couple of seasons, but I don't think that he is a bad offensive coordinator. I think that he was learning on the job a lot last season. It was his first season as a play caller and as an offensive coordinator. And then, he's still he's a young guy. He's like 38, 39 years old, played at Oklahoma State, played in the NFL a little bit, had some, guidance from Sean McVay and those guys in LA for a few years. I still think his best years are ahead of him as offensive coordinator. Also has a very good relationship with Baker Mayfield, because for that very short amount of time that he was in LA, Zach Robinson was a big part of being with Baker and kind of teaching him that system and so on. So I think, and I said this already for the Kirk Cousins thing, but I think the Bucs could definitely do worse than Zach Robinson. I know Falcons fans don't want to hear that, but he's certainly not like a terrible offensive coordinator the way that some Falcons fans might paint him to be. He definitely has. I mean, if you, like you said, he was able to unlock Kyle Pitts this season, even with Drake London out, where Kyle Pitts was like the only veteran that Kirk Cousins was even throwing the ball to. And you can't overstate that the offensive line did not play all that well this year in Atlanta, but Bijan Robinson led the entire league in scrimmage yards. So it's like, who was devising those and who was drawing up those plays to get Bijan Robinson more touches? It was Zach Robinson. So there were more positives than Falcons fans want to acknowledge. It just sometimes, it takes. You can't judge a coach on a team just like the same way you can't judge one player on a team in a vacuum. It's a team sport, and it's very hard to say that some guys are not good because they didn't succeed in one spot. Bill Belichick was not a good coach in Cleveland, right? Went to New England and became the greatest coach of all time. And I'm not saying that's going to happen to Zach Robinson, but I do think that if you ask people around the league, they definitely think highly of Zach Robinson. And I think you got to put more stock into that than, what fans are saying about his performance over 2 seasons in Atlanta.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, before I let you go, where does Atlanta go from here? The draft coming up, and man, they crushed it. They really did crush it last year. And, I even went back and saying, we love the Becca Ibuka here, but it would have been nice to have James Pierce with that pass rush. And, for the last couple of years, the Judon acquisition, I said, I don't know if they've done enough. Well, to bring in Jalen, to bring in James Pierce Jr., to get the X-Man back there in the secondary, I mean, it was a pretty damn good draft. Where do they go from here? What's the future of, Kyle Pitts? How do you think, what are some of the big changes that Atlanta fans should be looking forward to in the 2026 season?
They have to decide what to do with Kyle Pitts, because I could see them franchise tagging him. He's a free agent, but he was a top easily a top 5 tight end in the NFL this
Yeah.
past season. You could make an argument for top 3, maybe even top
doubt.
2, right? And so, what do you do with him? Do you try to franchise tag him, keep him for another year, franchise tag and trade maybe to get some, because they're lacking draft capital. The Falcons,
Mhm.
they don't have a first round pick, which is not great. That's what they traded for James Pierce Jr. So they're happy. They're happy they got James Pierce because they're not sure that you never know what their pick would be this year if they were going to get someone of the quality of James Pierce Jr. 10.5 sacks as a rookie. But by the way, one of the most underrated, like under publicized 10.5 sacks for a rookie like in NFL history. You're not seeing James Pierce on like the all rookie teams. You're not seeing him. I saw one list where he wasn't even like in the top 20 best rookies. Like, he had 10.5 sacks as a rookie, the most since Micah Parsons. What are we even talking about? I know that sometimes Atlanta can get left out of those league wide conversations, but man, that guy had a great rookie season. So did Jalen Walker. So did Xavier Watts. So I think you're talking second round of the draft now for the Falcons. I think a wide receiver has to be a high priority because they just did not have many accomplished pass catchers this year. Darnell Mooney was hurt. They released Ray McLeod early in the season, and that left them with a lot of kind of like journeymen, like guys up from the practice squad type guys. So I think they really need another pass catcher. Whether or not they keep Pitts or not, I think they need a wide receiver at some point. And I would be surprised if Stefanski and whoever the GM becomes doesn't also start building out things from the trenches out, right? Because that's kind of what worked so well for him in Cleveland when things were good. They brought in Bill Callahan as the offensive line. The Falcons have an above average offensive line. They dealt with injuries this season. Everyone was banged up. They lost Caleb McGarry, the right tackle, for the entire year. I expected it to be better, but I also expect them to kind of get some more depth. And the same thing for the defensive line, where it showed promise. They're keeping defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich, right? And the D-line did show promise, but they were kind of lacking in the run-stopping ability. So I wouldn't be surprised if they got, a guy in the second day of the draft who's like a real run stopper, like a big, a big dude, a big nose tackle type guy, to kind of fill in those gaps on the D-line on the interior.
Men's Royal Rumble winner, women's Royal Rumble winner. Who you got?
I haven't put a lot of thought into this because I mean, Jay, like the season ended, and then we're doing the president of football search for Matt Ryan. We're doing the head coaching. So I've been just like glued to like this whole thing. So I have not watched a ton, but I think Sami Zayn is a guy that could do it potentially. I think he's definitely a guy that could do it. I could see maybe a Braun Breaker, being the men's winner. And the women's side, like it's so wide open. And you mentioned Bianca Belair, who we have not seen her since last WrestleMania. I don't think anyone thought she was going to be out for as long as she has been, with that finger injury. You put her right in there. I mean, look, I don't think you need her to win the Royal Rumble to have her face Jade Cargill at WrestleMania. That's the match, right? It's going to be Bianca and Jade. You don't need the Royal Rumble to set that up. So it could be someone else. I don't know. It's really a wide open field. The women's women's side of wrestling has changed over the last even 5 years is incredible. Some of the NXT women down there are like, wow, like, oh my, when they come up to the main roster, people are going to be like, their minds are going to be blown about how good they are. And I'm looking forward to that over the next few years.
Yeah, Jordan Grace to me is the one that stands out to me. She's huge, man.
But Kendall Gray is the next one. I mean, she was a legit amateur wrestler, high level amateur wrestler, and man, she is an incredible athlete.
Yeah, and I'm just waiting for the first female Grande Americana because I think that would be a great storyline as well. Marc Raimondi, ESPN. Follow him on all social media platforms. Go get the book. You see it right behind his shoulder there. Say hello to the bad guys. I have my copy. I always thumb through it just because I always love reading wrestling stuff over and over and over again. If you're a wrestling fan, and also, even if you're not a huge wrestling fan, but your interest is peaked here in the Tampa area because Hulk Hogan's from around here and you want to learn. That's why I told you when I first read the book, it's even though it is for hardcore fans and NWO fans and people that grew up with the New World Order, Mark does such a great job of explaining certain things like baby faces and heels and kayfabe. And it's a really, I think the balance that you put forth in writing that book is probably my favorite thing about the entire thing because it's so expansive and making you don't speak over anybody's head. And I think when you do a work like this, you really run that risk. And I always look for that. So job well done, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the week and we'll talk to you again soon.
Much appreciated, man. Thank you for those kind words.
You got it, pal. The one and only Marc Raimondi, ESPN. Again, go read the book. And we got wrestling has such a great tradition and rich history here in the Tampa Bay area. Go check it out, man. It's really, really cool to be able to see just how whole the NWO was formed. Like it's unparalleled. It changed the landscape, and it's pop culture, man. It really was. It's yeah, such a good book. All right, let's bring him in a little bit early. The Icelandic warrior himself, Erik Erlendsson, Double E in the house. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I am good. I mean, it's been 4 guests on the show today. It's been popping. It's nonstop over and over and over again, talking a little bit of everything on the program today. But we got to talk about the Red Hot Lightning. I mean, wins 13 of their last 14, points in 14 games in a row. And you look at last night, they shut it. They've been able to shut it down. And is it too much to say that they're showing a lot of the traits that they showed 5 years ago when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals? Because I feel like it's not just that they're outscoring teams. They're outplaying these teams. They score a goal and they put the puck in deep, and then they grind, and they have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 shifts that are good after a goal. They're playing well in their own zone. I mean, what are some of the traits that really stand out to you, and do they remind you of when this team was at its peak?
Man, putting expectations on.
Yeah, buddy, got to do it, man. Got to do it.
I mean, it's so hard to. Yeah, I think there are some similarities. I think you look. I mean, what I look at, and me and Chief have talked about this ad nauseum for some of the road games recently. It's Yanni Gord,
Yeah.
and along with Pontus Holmberg and Zemgus Girgensons, I mean, those 3 guys set the tone for this team basically every night, right? They spend so much time in the offensive zone. They're defending by playing the offensive zone against the other team's top lines. I mean, Macklin Celebrini has had a tremendous year, and he didn't feel like he played the game last night.
Yeah, I didn't notice him much at all.
Yeah, and like they did that to Nathan McKinnon a couple weeks ago against Colorado. Colorado didn't. I mean, McKinnon really didn't really have too many opportunities, and that's hard to do. I mean, guys have off nights. There's no doubt about it, but it's not a coincidence that they're having off nights against the Tampa Bay Lightning, right?
Yeah.
Because especially on home ice, where John Cooper can control that matchup a little bit better. And you look at last night, the Gord line basically played between 10 and 11 minutes of even strength time up against the Celebrini line. And through 2 periods, Celebrini only had 1 shot on goal. He ended up with 5. So, I see that, to me, as sort of the biggest comparison, if you want, is the way that third line, if we want to call it the third line, plays. And you're just seeing everybody buy into that thought process. Defend first, the goals will come. Defend first, the goals will come. And it's not easy sometimes to get that message across and get everybody to buy in. But when you look at the injuries this team has had, they're getting everybody to buy in. And it's impressive to watch. It really is, especially when you sit here and think that they were 1-4-2 to start the season, and everybody was like ready to launch this team into the stratosphere, right? And then they were losing close games, but they were losing them. And, it was a bad 7-game stretch, which if it happened in January, maybe we wouldn't have thought as much about it, but because it started at the beginning of the season, but it was time to trade Kucherov and John Cooper's got to go. And, the same old rhetoric that you tend to hear in these situations. And, we're going to talk about this. We're not quite to game 60 yet. But Brandon Hagel sat in that locker room somewhere around game 9 or 10 and said, we're going to get to game 60, and we're all going to be laughing about people saying how bad the Tampa Bay Lightning were and their season is over.
You paused on me there, buddy. You back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we lost you there at the end. But yeah, I'm with you. And I remember him saying that. And I mean, when you look at Brandon Hagel, I just, again, I was joking with him last night. I go, you got to stop scoring goals, because then we keep talking to you after all these games. Because he made the message 2 weeks ago. He goes, "It's really nice to speak to you guys after wins, then after losses," and then we joked about it. And then after the last home win, and then this one, I go, "Stop scoring so many freaking goals. You won't have to talk to us." And he's like, "I'll take it." But he's just such a good hockey player, man. And we can't say enough good things about him. And it was comical, Cirelli and Hagel not being on there. And I think you look at Brandon Hagel and what he does, he just keeps getting better and better and better. And the ability for those two guys to be able to play with different players, right? To be able to play with Gensel, to be able to play with Kucherov. And I get it, they're top tier guys, but Gensel and Kucherov are two different types of players. What kind of adjustments do those two guys need to make when they go with a guy like Gensel, who's a little bit more of a straightforward guy, going into the corners, play a little bit more of a physical game, as opposed to a guy like Nikita Kucherov, where you kind of got to give him his space. You got to be ready for crazy passes. Like, how does Hagel and Cirelli continue to be able to play that well, regardless of who their other winger is?
Well, with Cooch, we know what a different type of player he is, and the demands that he has for anybody who plays on his line, right? And with Cooch is, you go get the puck, find a way to get it to him, and then put yourself in a position where he'll find you, and he'll find you.
Yeah.
My crappy internet keeps going out on me.
Yeah, it's all right. You're good.
But you Kucherov off the puck, and you have to read, which is not easy, but you have to read off of Kucherov in the way that the way you think he's going to perform, right? What's he going to do? Where is he going to find the space that nobody else is going to look for? With Gensel,
the internet's having a there you go.
Yeah. Gans so far, he's such a sneaky player. Like he just gets lost in coverage, especially around the net. It's amazing how, as good of a goal scorer as Jake Gensel is, people forget he's there. I mean, look at last night, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Double E, the internet is not cooperating today with Double E joining us on the program. We'll see if we can get him back in here. The internet has been crazy today. I mean, I was on a call earlier today with somebody up in Rochester. It wasn't really working. See if we can get Double E back here in a second to get him on the program. It just keeps stutter stepping. We'll see if we can get him back here. You're stutter stepping. We got you back. We're good.
I don't know. My internet's supposed to be good.
And then it froze again as he said that. Oh, Double E, man. This is one of those days, buddy. It's one of the, maybe the wires are frozen. Maybe there it is. All right. We'll finish with this, and we'll pick back up next week. When we look at this team and we're going forward, and they got to get to the Olympic break. That's the one thing that John Cooper was talking about. So over these next couple of games, what's the most important thing other than stay healthy? It doesn't look like Anthony Cirelli. That's going to be something that's going to be long-term, but great sign that McDonough, Hedman, and Lilleberg are back on the ice. Double E, those guys will be back before you know it. But what's kind of the focus other than saying kind of maintain, but what do they have to make sure that they do to continue to play this well? We know that they're not going to win the next 14 straight, but hell, who the hell knows? Maybe they will.
Hey, Norfolk did it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Different league, obviously different circumstances, but like one of the things I was kind of getting at last night is some of the questions that I was asking is this team's ability to don't look behind you and don't look in front of you. Everything is hyper focused on what's here. Dominic James had a great quote: "Stay where your feet are."
Yeah.
Right. It's basically don't worry about anything else except for what's here right in front of you, and they've done a great job of that. I mean, there are so many hockey cliches, and one of them is the first game back from a long road trip or the last game of a long road trip, right? You think about how well they played in Dallas, especially in the third period, shutting that team down, and then coming back last night for one home game before you have to go back out on the road. And they shut down the San Jose Sharks, who have been playing well. I think they were 7-3 since Tampa Bay beat them back in San Jose on January the 3rd. So it's, to me, that's just it. It's just maintain that daily focus on what it is you have to do today to give yourself the best chance to win a game tonight. And I think that's one of the great things that this team has been able to do is push past all of that and put themselves in position to win games. And that's all you can do, right? We can talk about X's and O's, and certainly there's game plans you try and go out and execute and adjust from game to game and team to team. But put yourself in position to win hockey games by playing winning hockey. And like if you look at the history, and specifically recent history of these long extended winning streaks and point streaks, for the most part, under John Cooper specifically, they've come in January.
Oh, we lost him. We tried. All right, that'll wrap it up for Double E this weekend. We knew what he was talking about here with the Lightning and the adjustments that they made in January. Make sure you go to lightninginsider.com. Use that promo code JNZ. $10 off, not just this year, but every recurring season after that. Here, the internet's not cooperating with us. Tell everybody real quick in 30 seconds what's up on lightninginsider.com. I just told them the promo code.
Yeah, hey, again, a recap of last night, trying to get into some of what I just mentioned about staying grounded and making sure you're in the moment. And look, there'll be a lot more coming up. This is an extremely busy time for me. Like I said, I'm working 4 or 5 jobs to try and make all this work. But the Stadium Series is coming as well.
Yeah, buddy.
There's some great stuff coming where I was out there yesterday looking at the rink starting to be built. There's some more stuff coming this week. I mean, there's an excitement level coming with that. So there'll be some more stuff coming in the days leading up to the outdoor game, which is just fascinating how the league is all putting this together and everything else. So yeah, sorry about my crappy internet.
No, you're good. I'm glad it happened here than on NHL Network, because that wouldn't have been good. Erik _Erlendsson, that's a K, not a C, 2 S's after the D. lightninginsider.com. Use that promo code JNZ. Get $10 off, not just this year, but every recurring season after that. Support local, support our guy, the great Erik Erlendsson. Double E, you're the man. We'll talk to you next week, hopefully with a better internet connection and with a much more in-depth convo. You're the best. Thanks, pal.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
All right, buddy. Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. He's all over it, man. Listen, we have E on every week. It's always a great chat with him. And sometimes, this is what happens. A long time ago, things like that happen. Like, I don't, nothing much bothers me in this world. So things like that are always fun, because that's why you're live, man, because things like that happen. But again, Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. E joins us every Wednesday. It's my fault, because we usually have him at 1. I moved them 1:30. Bad internet connection in the Erlendssons after 1:30. Maybe I'll take the blame for that one. There we go. All right, it's going to wrap it up for me. I'm heading over to Ian's place right now, the Beckles and Recher podcast at 2:30. So make sure you watch us right here on this channel. Going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk about Indiana. We'll talk about Miami and everything going on in the NFL. A big thank you to Erik Erlendsson and Marc Raimondi and Rich Hollenberg, and of course, Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. What an incredible chat with her today. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our love to our incredible partners here on the show, Honest Hammer Custom Builders, LLC, for all your residential and commercial needs. 813-244-0956, thehonesthammer.com, thehonesthammer@gmail.com. Go there, man. If you're looking for renovations on your house, remember, it's not just your house, it's your home. You want to support local. I've been saying that a lot today. My guy, Russ, my buddy, Hammer. Those are the guys that you want to support. 813-244-0956. Tell them that you heard it right here on the Jay Recher podcast. And, of course, EverHealth, too. EverHealth.org. The injury report with Dr. Carlos Rodriguez at 12:30 mañana. It should be a good one. Cannot wait for that. And then, again, 17 different locations in Pinellas County. They can really help you. It's a new age of healthcare, from the cradle to the grave. We appreciate our partners so freaking much. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Guys and gals, I appreciate all the love and the support. Again, Beckles and Recher coming up at 2:30. Back live here tomorrow. Dr. Rodriguez, Eddie Encina. More good stuff right here on the Jay Recher podcast. We'll see you tomorrow at noon. I'm gone. Peace out. Deuces, y'all.